Hello there, my name is Gareth Davies and I'm going to talk to you about my placement year at Siemens. Basically, I did a placement year at University of Sunderland and I worked for a company called Siemens, which are a global engineering company. They specialise in industrial applications and hardware. So I was quite lucky to get a job there really because it's such a big company. But yeah, I basically applied for them online. I did it from home. I did it downstairs actually in the lounge. I remember doing it like last year and it was crazy. And like to this day, I still can't believe that I actually got into it, to be honest with you. Went in with no knowledge of like business, just didn't know any business at all. My background was more IT. I got the job based on the fact that I was going to do more like the technical side, like application development. When I started Siemens, the first thing I did was I basically had to go through all these tests to basically get my like knowledge up to date about like the company's like rules and guidelines and stuff. It felt better because I was with somebody my own age. I was with a colleague and we weren't separated. We could sit next to each other. So we basically like did it together really. When I first started, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do because I got there and I was sort of like sitting around in the office like, oh my god, like what am I doing here? I felt like I was kind of out of place a little bit because I didn't know what I was going to do. But one of the best things about working for Siemens is they don't give you stuff to do. You have to find something yourself and you have to sort of make your own projects up. And I think that's a fantastic like idea because if you're stuck doing the same thing every single day, you're probably going to hate it. So you can sort of come up with your own project ideas and you can suggest it to your manager. And the chances are you'll probably say yes, as long as it's like realistic, not a stupid idea. At first, when I didn't know what I was doing, I sort of got suggested by my manager to create like a weather app using this new software called Mendix that I'd never come across before. After spending about 2 days on it, just messing around with the software, I volunteered to show this app that I developed using Mendix, and like all of the managers were like blown away when they saw it. This is unique, like we've never had somebody wanting to just show us something like this before. It's usually like a business talk or something. One of the things I did was I actually travelled to London. I actually went to a Mendix presentation. Basically, Mendix is a low-code software platform. I spent a lot of time like designing the CSS, the HTML. With Mendix, you don't do that much HTML because it's all sort of generated for you. It's like a framework, like like Angular or React. And I was using it like as a way for me to get started with app development. Siemens had paid for this application development suite to be used, and I was sort of like quite specialised in it. I'd basically played around with this software that they'd recently bought, and that actually allowed me to go to these presentations. So when I got down to London, I basically went to Mendix headquarters that was attached on the email. I just had to put the address into Google Maps and it told me where to go. So I walked into this building, and the first thing I could tell straight away was, it was very posh and it was very professional. And I kind of just stood there for a second. I was like, oh my god, am I actually doing this? Am I actually going to like this boardroom of businessmen and women? I'm actually going to this, and I'm like only 20 years old. I was like, whoa, this is crazy. So when I got there, I kind of was, a bit worried. What if I don't have any questions to ask? Like, what if people are like just judging me because I'm younger, because everybody else is older in that room? But it was fine, really. Basically, it was introducing Mendix to like a bunch of engineering specialists, like app development. They didn't really know that much about it. So I kind of just sat at the back. It was quite slow because I think they were trying to show the software to people who had never used it before. So with my experience, I just went straight through it and did all of the work. And they were a bit surprised. They were like, oh, well, he's done it like faster than everybody else. Didn't mind, they didn't do anything about it really. They just sort of left me to wait for everybody else. It went on for quite a lengthy amount of time, like about 2.5 hours. Prior to the presentation, I'd already developed a weather app in Mendix. So I had something to show, like something that I'd already done. Near the end of the presentation, I actually got up and asked one of the presenters if I could show the app off to like all of the other people. It was really awkward because the presentation was coming to an end and he was like, any more questions? And I just sort of like blurted out loud, I was like, can I show my app off? And everybody just stopped and like turned around. And everybody was like, whoa, who's this guy? So I basically got up, stood at the front and presented the weather app that I developed, and it wasn't really anything amazing. It was just like a basic CSS and HTML like design. But because I'd used CSS, because I was so good at CSS, it actually came across as being better than it was because they thought that the design was really good. Okay, so one other highlight I would say was I went down to Ipswich for an event. Basically it was Beast of the East event by IBM and also Angular Mortar. And basically what the event was about was it was about Angular Mortar and what they have to offer. The event consisted of blow-up tents, so they basically had loads of tents scattered around this field, and you could walk in and you could basically walk around and see the different aspects of the Angular Mortar. IBM did a separate one with Beast of the East, and I went to that as well. And I've got video footage of that as well.
Some of the thoughts and ideas and things that I've seen that might help you explore your imagination. Let's start going back in time. Somebody from the 1950s turned up in the room today. What do you think would be the most difficult thing to explain to them about the world we live in? Internet? Mobile phones? This was a question that was actually asked on Reddit. That bastion of nice attitude and polite discourse. If someone from the 1950s suddenly appeared today, what would be the most difficult thing to explain to them about the world we live in? And the top voted answer: I possess a device in my pocket that is capable of accessing the entirety of information known to man. I use it to look at pictures of cats and get into arguments with strangers. And that, for me, really, I think, encapsulates the idea of how crazy this connected world we live in. And if you think about it, if you're my age, which some of you are, I'm sure, we had very different stuff when we were kids. We didn't have flat screen TVs. The BBC Micro, first computer that I had an experience with, and the game Elite made me a gamer for life. And of course, music came on magnetic tapes.
Okay, so another highlight basically of working at Siemens was we actually went down to Cambridge. It was called the Manufacturing on a Shoestring project. So when we were there, we basically sat through this presentation, which was okay. I'm probably exaggerating there, it was a bit boring really, but after that we actually had to set up our stuff. So we actually got the rig that we were working on, we set it up, plugged it in. Then we also got our banners as well, like with the Siemens logo, like to show that this is like the company. And then it was quite hilarious actually, because when I got there, the application didn't work. I phoned up one of the guys I was working with who wasn't there on the day. I rang him up and said, "Oh, dude, it's not working. Do you know how to fix it?" And he just responded, "What's your IP address set up?" And I just said, "Well, it's on the IPv4, it's 192 blah blah blah." And here's me like stressed out because it's like, the presentation day and everything. We found that it was the IP address that was the problem. It was just that like a single digit on the end was the wrong number. It was like a 6 instead of a 5. So I was like, oh. So then after that, it actually worked. Yeah, it worked perfectly, and we got live data coming in. There was a display inside the rig that had like the temperature, the humidity, and the dust. And then in the app, you had like humidity, temperature, and dust on the app as well. But it would only update every 5 seconds because I hadn't figured out like latency issues. And yeah, the event went really well. The people who actually went round the different products and prototypes, they actually came from a business background. So I had to sort of relate it more to the business aspect. They weren't interested in the technical side, like how I'd done it, how I got it communicating. They were more interested in the business aspects, so I had to sort of like tailor my response to business. And then after that, I did like a project over Christmas. So I made an application called the G120X tracker. So it tells you where the G120X products are in the factory in Congleton. So what I did was I had to travel down to Congleton from Manchester every single day. And my job was like the lead developer, so I had to take a role on the application, like the functionality and the design and stuff. And the other guys were just sort of drawing on a whiteboard and telling me what they wanted the app to do. So I had to sort of understand what they were asking for. You just have to keep questioning them, and then eventually you'll get the right answer and you'll understand what they want. On the last day, my manager came down in his car. It was funny seeing him because, it'd been an entire week without being in the office. And he came in and he watched my presentation. And there was about 50 people in the room at the time. Like, there was a lot of people in that room wanting to see this application. So basically I showed it off. One of the guys in the audience got really excited. He was like, "Yes, I can see the potential here. This has potential. I can see this. This looks like a really good idea. I think I've got even better ideas." I was like, just like nodding, like, yeah, you do that. That inspired him, like from my design and from the functionality. So basically, I'd learned quite a lot from doing this project and like the microflow functionality. Microflows, if you don't know what they are, they're basically like a JavaScript function, but they're in like a GUI, so you have to sort of drag and drop stuff, almost like a UML diagram, but more like functionality. It's quite complicated. The functionality was quite difficult for the app because I was trying to do certain things like aggregate data. One of the other highlights of my job at Siemens is we're basically designing an app for a customer that could show them like a water level of a service reservoir, so like different service reservoirs inside the UK. If you don't know what a service reservoir is, it's basically like a tank that basically fills up with water, and it makes it so that the water can build up at certain points around the UK, so that it can then be filtered into like houses and stuff. because if you just had a single pipe going from a massive like reservoir, like a lake, to like a house, it wouldn't work. You need like a buffer, so a service reservoir is like a buffer basically. So my job was basically work on this app in Angular and make sure the app was compatible with Internet Explorer. They didn't expect too much from me. They kind of like took things slow and like allowed me to do it in my own time. So that was really good of them to do that. Develop my skills as well, because Angular was something I'd never used before. I was using React quite a lot, and Angular is really a really good business tool that a lot of companies use, and I feel like I'm just 100 times better at it now, really. Okay, so as you can see, we've got the list view here full of the different reservoirs. So if we go ahead and click on a location here, you can go and see the different types of reservoirs on the map. You'll also notice that if we click on here, the map expands so we can see more information on the screen. One of the bugs that I actually fixed for the team was when you click on this button here, the map kind of glitches out at the side because it doesn't recognize the new screen width. So now that has been fixed by including an on-click function. So when the user clicks on this, the map will re-render after the animation has been played. So you can see there's a slight animation here of 1 second. When this animation finishes, you can see that the map is now fixed. There's no grey box here. It actually renders it properly. You'll also notice I've changed the animation is compatible with Internet Explorer. The water level was not actually on top of the water, so you had like this layer of the wave and then the layer of water, and it wouldn't actually join together. And so in the newest version, you can see that the water level is now improved, so it's no longer separated from the actual water. And you can see what I did was I included this water wave ID, and if we go into the CSS, you'll see that what I've done is I've added a display inline flex. I've also played around with the container as well. So you can see that I've added some border radius, border tops, and basically what these values do is they enable the container that the tank sits in to correctly position itself on the page. You'll also notice that we've got this custom little date range picker here, which looks quite cool. This previously is unresponsive. If I go ahead and resize it, you'll see that it resizes to the screen's width, which is really cool. The way that works is it uses the Bootstrap grid system to basically change how many items are displayed on the screen at once. And then one other thing I did was I also changed the checkbox as well. So I actually coded this myself in CSS. If we select this here, you can see what that looks like. You'll see that this is a partially selected one because we haven't selected all of the values, and I can show you what the code looks like. So basically what I've done is I've created a custom checkbox class. So basically the @ symbol refers to the parent selector. So we're saying parent selector, if the parent selector is checked, then do this. Customizing the labels, the before and after properties. And then also you'll notice that we've got a box shadow here. I decided to use a RGBA property instead of hex because you can actually specify the transparency here. Because we're also using SCSS, we can also use some predefined variables. So we're basically getting the variables from these files here that are already part of the Siemens core UI library. Okay, so final verdict. Do I think doing a placement year is worth it? Absolutely. It's opened my eyes up more. Honestly, if I was to recommend it, or if I was to say don't do it, I would say definitely do it, because it's going to change everything that you know like about software. Especially when you're at university, you're not using the same tools that you do in industry. It just opens your eyes up more. It's really good like for a reference as well for like a job. You've got to realize that a lot of these businesses understand that you're just an intern and they don't expect you to be like a wizard or anything, you know. They're just gonna expect you to just crack on with the work. Obviously it depends where you work, but like for me, working at Siemens, it was fantastic. Like the people that I met there as well, people from like Liverpool, Manchester and London, like people across the UK were there, like so many people that I'd never met before. You had the senior people who worked there for years and years, 40 plus, but then you had people who were like my age, like in the 20s and 19. And that was really good to be with other young people as well. I remember one of the guys was designing a website, like he'd never used like HTML or CSS and he was learning it. It wasn't like everybody was sat down at a desk and you had to keep your head down. It felt more like you could talk to people, not have to worry about being quiet all the time, because it was a loud office where I worked, because it was like almost like a call center. Like you could hear people like in the back giving customer support. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video was somewhat helpful. That's it for me. And if you've got any questions, just come and find me in the campus. I'm happy to answer any questions. And goodbye. See you later.